The president of Uganda Local Governments Association, ULGA, who is also the Napak district chairman, Joseph Lomonyang, told a retreat for leaders from local and central government as well as the civil society as government kicked off consultations for the review of the decentralization policy that it is imperative for the Local Government Finance Commission, LGFC, to ensure equity and fairness in the distribution of development grants. Mr. Lomonyang urged that given the critical role local governments play in the implementation of government programs towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, as sanctioned by the United Nations, government ought to put special focus on local governments, suggesting a 38% allocation of the national budget to districts. Local governments currently get about 9% of the national budget allocations, which is 31% points less than what the districts used to get 15 years ago when government started to systematically re-centralize the roles that had been devolved to the districts in 1997 when the decentralization policy was implemented with the coming into force of the Local Government Act that has since undergone several amendments. The policy fundamentally decentralized service delivery institutions and their governance to improve access to services for the rural poor. ULGA Secretary General Gertrude Rose Gamwera welcomed the policy's review, which she said has been long overdue since the current arrangement has been curtailing efforts by local governments to deliver effectively as expected under their constitutional mandate, which calls for the transfer of power to local governments to be able to implement different programs.
That so much is going amiss in terms of the new legal and policy regimes, and it has been curtailing the efforts of local governments to deliver as expected within the meaning of our constitutional mandate, that is chapter 11, that talks about decentralization and devolution, transferring real power to local governments to be able to act and implement. That has changed for so long. We're talking about tendency to re-centralize, staff being taken back, money is being taken back by the center. When you hear somebody, you have powers to collect local revenue. But again, when you collect, please first bring it to the center and we agree for you how you're going to use it. That is something different. That is not transferring real power. So we are welcoming this evaluation and we want to say thank you. First and foremost, let me thank government of Uganda for having responded and heeded to our call for a comprehensive review. We welcome it as a local government sector. We want to thank government for that responsiveness. At least there's an indication that there's a bit of interest in government to see that this policy is working. When you give us a sector at the end of 2018, now you're agreeing to evaluate and do a comprehensive review of how it's working for purposes of its betterment, we're hoping, then that is quite a positive move, and we are quite excited in the local government fraternity, particularly ULGA. So we hope that at the end of the day we're going to see things that have been going wrong corrected. We're going to see the local governments being given the real power, the discretion to be able to decide and plan together with their people, the citizens, involving them, allowing them to participate in planning and implementation process. We hope to see this actually become real. And we've time and again looked at sometimes when you're trying to cause positive change, you look in the neighborhood, what's happening? Rwanda came pick lessons, they're flourishing. Kenya came pick lessons, they're flourishing. Can we go back to that which they came to learn, went and did it better? That's what we want to see. Can we even do it better than them? Because we are the architects. We're the ones who give them the example. So can we see local governments vibrant? Can we see local governments better resourced? Can we see local governments churning out policies? Because they have councils. Councils are legislative bodies. Can we see them empowered to try to make these policies that are actually going to make the national policies work? Because perhaps there is a perception that local governments are failing to implement government policies because they don't have capacity. But have you thought that the process through which it can happen was not enabled? Because when you make policy, local governments in their localities make the local policies, translating yours to make it real. This has not been happening because our councils are very weak. They were not empowered. They're under-resourced. Look at every year we come out in public and talk about national allocation. Nobody is listening. We hope government with this evaluation, you will listen. Because that's now the question we're asking, who is listening? We are talking, who is listening? You're asking us to talk, who is listening? You come up with policies and consult, and then we get the outcome which is totally not in favor of empowering local governments. Who is listening? We hope that the recommendations of this report will be taken on by cabinet, will be taken on by parliament, and we see a real reform process of decentralization to put it back to the foreseen tenets that are anchored in Chapter 11. A powerful decentralization policy with citizens actively involved, planning for their priorities and needs, and equally resourced to undertake the same.
She added that under the current practice, money is collected by local governments and then sent to the central government to determine a specific amount that should be sent back to offer services. Gamwera proposed that local governments need to be given power and discretion to be able to plan and decide with their communities so that they equally participate in planning and the implementation of projects.
The local governments are the implementers, so allow them to do that role as foreseen in the Constitution, and perhaps that will be a better product for both government and local governments in terms of being able to give the people of Uganda what they need. So we hope that this evaluation can bring that out clearly. Perhaps they were thinking it was a money scramble because they're talking about funding, but we're also talking about real implementation. And that also, in these discussions for the day, makes us reflect a little bit more on the NDP3. Who are the real implementers? We've moved from sector budgeting to program-based. Are we not going to continue hiding under the thematic programs to do what the rural government should actually be doing, and therefore an abuse to our decentralization policy Uganda was so well known for? So we hope that the evaluation and the comprehensive review can be able to put back Uganda in that place as far as decentralization is concerned.
ULGA Vice President Eastern Patrick Kayemba noted that even though they welcome the move to review the decentralization policy, they have advocated for this for the past 15 years, and that there has been the partial implementation of both the administrative and political roles in the decentralization policy, yet the fiscal implementation has been ignored.
Of course, we can be very proud as ULGA that we have championed this, we have advocated for this for a long period of time. There's no way we would always pretend to be implementing a decentralization policy which actually is not implemented to the latter. There are particular principles and objectives that have been implemented and some other have been ignored. For example, fiscal decentralization have totally been ignored. But also the successes of political decentralization and administrative decentralization have also been withdrawn when there has been increasingly the withdrawal of technical people, some classes of technical people to the center, So that has been a mismatch. There's always a mismatch in that. So, but nevertheless, we are very, very happy. But we wanted to add one issue on the terms of reference, and that has been we need to interrogate why has government deliberately not implemented this decentralization policy to its fullness. Why?